This right here is a brand new release from Bushmills that's trying to be a little bit different. This week, let me tell you about the 14-year-old single malt whiskey from Bushmills. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Matt, I'm the whiskey nerd, and like I said, this is the Bushmills 14-year-old single malt. So let me get it into the glass and I'll tell you a little bit more about it. Now, first off, I will say that Bushmills were very kind and they did send me this bottle. They didn't ask me to do a review, they didn't ask me to do anything. It's a brand new release that's just being launched. Like, I'm filming this video before it's like official launch. So they just sent it to me kind of as a pre-release. They didn't ask me to do a review of it. Now, chances are you send a bottle of whiskey to a guy who does whiskey reviews, you're gonna get a whiskey review, but they didn't ask me to do anything. It was just a kind of a celebration, but I thought I'd be fair to all you guys and let you know I didn't pay for this bottle. They were sent to me, but this is a completely fair and independent review. Now, what this whiskey is, let me tell you about it. It is a 14-year-old single malt from Bushmills. If you're familiar with the Bushmills kind of line of single malts, I think they call it like their prestige or their premium line. They're all in this kind of nice fancy square bottle, and there's a 10-year-old, a 14-year-old, a 16-year-old, I think a 21-year-old, then there's 25 and 30-year-olds, very fancy. I did a review of the 10-year-old single malt. I'll put a link to that up there. If you want, you can check that out and let me know if you want to see reviews of those other Bushmills, more expensive, the older ones. But this right here is the new 14-year-old. So what makes this one a little bit different? Well, the other whiskies in that range, they're all aged in bourbon and then finished in either sherry or port casks. So it's kind of classic Irish whiskey flavors like bourbon and sherry, very, very classic. This here though, it was aged in bourbon, yes, for first and second fill bourbon casks, but it was finished for up to 12 months in Malaga wine casks. So Malaga, gets its name from the Malaga region. It's usually a sweet, maybe fortified red wine made from PX or Pedro Jimenez grapes and Moscatel grapes. So it's a very nice, very sweet, rich wine from the south of Spain, and it's generally a red wine, but I've done a bit of research that there are some different kind of varieties of this Malaga wine in the Malaga region. They didn't say if there was a specific producer they worked with, but there's not many producers in that region, so they might have just bought some casks. They did say that the casks that they used for this were aging like the Malaga wine for about 5 years, and then within 3 days of them being emptied, they were shipped over to Bushmills to get filled up with the whiskey, so there should be some really nice strong flavour from that wine coming through. Interestingly, in my little bit of research about this one, I learned that it was 14 years, so it spent 14 years in bourbon casks before being finished for up to a year, up to 12 months in those Malaga wine casks. So it might be actually closer to 15 years, but chances are when they vatted it together, they had some casks, some of those Malaga wine casks, so because they were so fresh, probably gave loads of flavour, and so the whiskey was probably ready after like 9 months. Other casks might have been like 12, 13, 14 months, let it go a little longer. So there might be some whiskey in here that's over 15 years old, but since you have to say what's the youngest whiskey in the bottle, it's 14 years old, but it's actually more closer to 15, probably the average is around 15 years old in the bottle. Now, like I said, also just looking at the bottle, this is a UK exclusive right now because this is a pre-release bottle. Like I said, it's probably not available internationally. Like, I'm in Ireland, I'm not in the UK, but it was sent to me, so it's probably not available internationally when this review comes out, but it is part of their core range, so it will be available internationally. It sells for about €70 in Ireland right now when it goes on sale. I think that's pretty fair, like for a 14, almost 15-year-old single malt in a fun different cask. It also puts it around about the middle of the road between that 10 and the 16-year-old whiskey in terms of the price, if you're looking at the Bushmills kind of lineup. So it is €70. Like I said, I didn't pay for it, but I think €70 is a pretty fair price for the whiskey. Last few details on the whiskey, it's coming in at 40% alcohol by volume. Boo, sad face, because I do like, stronger whiskeys. And it doesn't say if it's natural colour or if it's been chill filtered. If it's at 40%, chances are it's been chill filtered, so you can have it on the rocks and it won't get cloudy. And based on the colour, if there wasn't colour added, they would have said there's no colour added. So it probably has a bit of caramel colouring just to even out and keep it consistent. But that's, I think, all the information we have on it. Let's go in for the nose and see how it is. Cheers. Okay, it's really fruity on the nose. It is like the Bushmills kind of malt already has this kind of fruity, funky note to it. If you're familiar with the Bushmills note, you'll know what I'm talking about. All these distilleries have a specific kind of DNA to their malt, and the Bushmills has this kind of fruity note, but here it's less malty fruity note and more fruity note, if that makes sense. Like it is very orangey. It's almost like a flamed orange peel, or like when you get that slightly burnt, not like burnt in a bad way, but like toasted orange peel on the nose. All that orange kind of flavor is also balanced out with a lot of like earthy spice. Like there's cinnamon, there's a bit of ginger in there, but again, it's not like that ginger powder or that cinnamon powder. It's like if you get like a ginger root, you know, like that stem of ginger, and you smell it. You get that flavor of ginger, yes, a bit of spice, but it's a bit more earthy and a bit more kind of like deep almost, if that makes sense. It's not like that dry, almost sharp spiciness. It's that earthiness underneath it. There is some like, I wouldn't say like vanilla bean, but almost like vanilla frosting. Like if you imagine the vanilla frosting with, you know, where it's not like smooth, it's not like a buttercream, or it has like almost like little crystals of sugar in it, you know, when it has that, it's like the icing you'll get on top of a cupcake, like the cupcake icing up top. It's that kind of like sugary, sweet vanilla in there, and as I'm sitting with it a bit more, and getting a little bit like tropical notes, like from that Malaga wine, you will sometimes get tropical fruity notes on it, and it's a little bit of like mango, like a little bit of that juicy kind of mango flavor coming in at the end of the nose as you sit with it a bit more. But let's go in for the palate and see how it is, see if it stays as fruity. Cheers. The mouthfeel is almost honey. Like it's at 40%, so it's not going to be super dense and super rich, but it's almost honeyed. Like it's quite a thick mouthfeel even down at 40%. And the immediate flavors you get on the nose, on the palate, are those flavors from the nose just turned up to 11. Like more of that rich orange, more of that like earthy spice, almost going more earthy note, if you know what I mean. Like a little bit more like cocoa, a little bit more of that, almost like, yeah, there's a bit of oak spice as well coming through. So instead of it being that cinnamon, you're getting that oak kind of flavor, those kind of darker, deeper, earthy notes. And there's also more of that mango. Like I'll go in for a second sip in a minute, but I got more of that mango, almost pineapple-y, like more juicy on the palate than it was in the nose. The nose, it was quite orangey, it was quite citrusy, had a bit of the mango in the background. The palate much more kind of juicy and alive. So gonna go in for a second sip because I didn't really get a lot of vanilla there on the first go around. Despite the fact that on the nose there was a nice bit of vanilla, on the palate it's more that earthy spiciness. I didn't really get a huge amount of vanilla, so go in for a second sip. Cheers. Like if there is vanilla there, it's probably supporting the other flavors. Like I'm getting it a little bit on the finish now, but as I'm talking, but if it's there in the palate, it's probably just supporting the other flavors. It's supporting that sugariness, that sweetness, that bright, like I said, the nose was quite citrusy, into the palate it's quite juicy, fruity, so it's that sweetness, that kind of brightness is coming through, I think. There is a little bit of like caramelized brown sugar, again, from that oak, from that wine influence. Like the Malaga wine, it's made with the PX, the Pedro Jimenez grapes, and those grapes give you a very syrupy, dense kind of flavor, and that's, I think, coming through as well here, getting that kind of caramelized, almost syrupy brown sugar flavor coming through, and you get plenty of that kind of earthy, oaky spiciness balancing out that kind of brighter fruity notes. So I'm going to go in again. I've already mentioned a little bit about the finish, so I'm going to go in again and focus on the finish. Cheers. Okay, so the finish, I'd say for a 40% whiskey, the finish is quite long. Like I've had some 40%ers that you finish it, you swallow it, you take a breath and it just falls off. Like it's not the longest, but for a 40%er, it's fairly long. You get a little bit of that kind of vanilla creaminess rounding things out. Like I said, the mouthfeel was like almost honeyed. It's that kind of like almost creaminess coming through. And as I'm breathing, as I'm talking, I'm also getting a little bit of like more of that earthy, spicy note, but almost going towards like leather, but not like old leather, not like, you know, chewing a wallet, chewing a cow, more like that fresh cuttings of leather. Like if you've ever gone to like a workshop or high school, if you've ever been in the workshop and you get that fresh, soft, supple leather, that kind of like note, that kind of flavor, not like cigar box, dark, like heavy, but more lighter. And again, with that earthy note still. Still fruity. I'm still tasting it, so it has a fairly long finish, but it's more that spicy notes. The fruity notes, they're pretty gone. They go pretty quickly, leaving you with that earthy kind of spicy notes. A little bit of like that burnt orange peel, like I was saying, from the nose. A little bit of that kind of citrusy there, but it's less of juicy and more like the citrus peel, like those orange oils, like that. Those kind of more earthy, kind of herbal notes almost into the finish. Before I give my final thoughts on this whiskey, if you're new here, scroll down, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I put out whiskey reviews like this every Wednesday, and I put out cocktail recipes featuring whiskey every Friday, and I will have a cocktail recipe featuring this whiskey right here this Friday. So if you want to see that, make sure you scroll down, hit that subscribe button, and while you're there, drop me a comment and let me know what you think of Bushmills whiskies. If you've tried a couple of different Bushmills whiskies, what one's your favorite? Let me know what it is. But right now, my final thoughts on this one, I think I like it. I mean, obviously, I got this bottle for free, so I didn't pay anything, so I can't, there is that probably element of it there coming in, that like it's easier to enjoy a whiskey when you didn't have to pay for it. But I think it's quite nice. Like, obviously, I like a whiskey coming in like at that 46%, and I would like to see Bushmills whiskies coming in at that slightly higher percent. Like, it's almost becoming like a staple of Irish whiskies these days, where you see like Dingle, you see Teeling, you see Blackwater, you see these distilleries coming out with slightly higher proof, coming into that 40, 45, 46%. You're seeing that becoming a bit of a standard, and I wouldn't want Bushmills to be left behind, because they're making good whiskies. And this here, it's definitely a crowd pleaser. I think they intended for this one to be a bit of a crowd pleaser, to be a bit of a, everyone can enjoy this. It's a bit brighter, it's a bit fruitier. It's still got all that Bushmills malty note in there, but lightened up with a bit of that like Malaga wine cask. Again, it's going to be familiarly Irish, but not like that bourbon and cherry combination. It's just a little bit different, but still a crowd pleaser. But like, it's a nice whiskey at 40%. It would probably be a really nice whiskey at 46%. So I do hope we see some more kind of slightly higher proof. Not asking for cask strength releases, although I would like a cask strength release, but just something a little bit higher, push that number up from that 40. It might mean the price goes up a little bit, but people do like those higher proof whiskeys, and they will probably pay for it. Still, like I said, this is absolutely a crowd pleaser whiskey. So if you like Bushmills whiskies, you're probably gonna like this one here. I know I like Bushmills whiskies, and I definitely like this one, so I'm gonna keep on enjoying this, and I will see you next time. Sláinte.